What would you see if we drained all the oceans? If I told you that this blue planet before your eyes is entirely a facade, that its true appearance has been hidden beneath an average depth of 3,800 meters of seawater for billions of years. Today, we will use technology to strip away its makeup. If we sucked every drop of seawater from the entire globe, every scene that follows would make you question existence itself. When sea level drops by 150 meters, additional land once submerged will emerge. There are no signs of terrestrial life here, only damp sand and mud covering everything. The first sight before our eyes is the North Sea and the English Channel seabed, transformed into a gigantic historical graveyard. The brutality of different eras lies exposed and entangled. Beside a rusted modern fishing vessel are the decayed timbers of an ancient whaling ship. A World War II submarine reveals half of its hull above the mud. Its metal shell has been almost completely eaten away by marine corrosion, its surface covered with dead reef formations. This is a chaotic cemetery at the bottom of the sea, where millions of sailors who perished were buried. Their remains long ago became part of the deep sea terrain, but something even more terrifying still lies ahead. The air around us begins to change silently. A catastrophe more horrifying than all shipwreck disasters is unfolding. The mud before us is not ordinary soil, but a biological time bomb. Hundreds of millions of tons of decaying organic matter accumulated here. These are plankton that settled over thousands of years after the seawater receded. These substances quickly dry under the sunlight, turning into gray toxic dust as strong winds sweep across, carrying the dust and forming poisonous clouds. Inside are heavy metals such as mercury, the very pollutants humans have discharged into the ocean for hundreds of years. Storms now darken the entire sky on an unprecedented scale, sweeping across coastal megacities like New York and Tokyo. This is an environmental disaster even worse than Chernobyl, because it happens across every exposed inch of global seabed, with nowhere to hide. Only now do we truly understand that the ocean was never merely a container of water, but a gigantic filter of the earth, silently bearing humanity's pollution and locking toxins into the deep sea. And when that filter disappears, the earth begins to destroy itself as sea levels continue to retreat. We finally see the objects that Western radar once marked as anomalies. Off the coast of Cuba and near Japan, square stone blocks appear in rows, even structures resembling wide roads. It is as if this were an ancient city laid out with strict planning. We have seen these blurry illusions on satellite images before. Now, at last, we can touch these cold stone blocks with our own hands in a moment of astonishment. It feels as though we have stepped into a fragment of a giant civilization. The relief carvings on the walls, though worn by time, display a symmetrical precision in the arrangement of stone blocks that does not seem to be the work of natural forces. But mainstream science provides a rational explanation already prepared. These are perfectly geometric structures formed by nature, requiring no supernatural power. The roads and walls we mistook are merely fractures created when rock cooled. But even after excluding these illusions, we still find authentic traces that should not exist here. 12,000 years ago, when glaciers melted, Stone Age settlements were engulfed by layers of coral and shells, not because someone deliberately concealed them. Because the ocean is the largest and most reliable preservation site on Earth, these ancient relics were safely preserved. When we reach the deep sea plains, 4,000 meters beneath the ocean floor, this region occupies more than half of the Earth's surface area, the flattest and quietest place on the planet. There are no mountains here, no hills, only an endless gray expanse of sediment. These layers were formed from dust and microscopic organisms over hundreds of millions of years. When you step onto it, the mud can sink to your knees. Even during the day, it remains pitch black. Sunlight never reaches this dead abyssal plain. We suddenly discover mysterious intersecting straight lines. This monotonous terrain is so featureless it becomes numbing. Even astronauts admit that standing on the moon is more interesting than being here. Once you place yourself in this environment, you immediately lose all sense of direction, as if abandoned by the entire universe. But these mysterious straight lines are the lifeblood of humanity's digital civilization. They are the undersea fiber optic cables connecting continents, carrying 99% of global internet traffic. We always think satellites and cloud technology exist high above us, yet we forget the physical foundation that supports the entire internet. It is these fragile cables lying beneath deep seabed mud, like garden hoses carelessly thrown into a pit. These cables were installed by specialized ships protected by immense ocean pressure and stable low temperatures. They are relatively safe. But once deprived of the protection of seawater under the scorching sun, the protective layers would quickly melt, and their own weight would be enough to snap them apart. The moment the ocean is drained, human civilization's technological level would fall straight back to the 19th century. All transactions would come to a complete halt. Intercontinental communication would be entirely severed. The global economy would collapse within minutes. This scene exposes a brutal truth. Our daily lives are far more dependent on the deep-sea environment than we ever realized. Human digital civilization hangs precariously on a few thin cables at the bottom of the ocean. The rapid collapse of the digital world would trigger chaos in the physical world. Cities would fall into a state of unmanaged disorder. Power grids would lose synchronization. Continents would plunge into darkness. Air traffic control systems would be paralyzed. Thousands of aircraft would lose positioning and communication. The risk of cascading disasters would loom everywhere. The lights of civilization would go out one by one across the globe. This is not merely the disappearance of social media, but the collapse of modern logistics. Medical safety systems would completely fail. Humanity would realize in terror. Everything we depend on is built upon a few slender strands. Exposed to sunlight, they would snap. The ocean also serves as a colossal cooling system. Seawater seeps into fractures in the Earth's crust, is heated to hundreds of degrees Celsius, and erupts as black hydrothermal vents containing heavy metals and sulfur, creating a unique chemical environment. Once seawater is gone, this process would spiral completely out of control, delivering a destructive blow to Earth's atmosphere. Toxic volcanic gases would erupt straight into the sky on the scale of a supervolcano eruption, turning the planet into a blazing furnace. We are standing directly above the control panel of the tectonic engine. The movement here drives continental drift, triggers devastating earthquakes and tsunamis, destroys our cities. And the disasters released from these fractures would be even more terrifying than extreme heat. Hydrothermal vents would begin releasing thousands of tons of hydrogen sulfide and methane. Yellow toxic clouds would drift toward the continents. These gases are heavier than air. They would flow into the dry seabed valleys. Wherever they move, everything would wither. At that moment, the exposed seabed would begin releasing reactive corrosive chemicals, destroying the atmosphere, altering the air we breathe, turning it into a deadly acidic mixture. When Earth loses its oceans, the filter that silently absorbed pollutants for millions of years would begin suffocating itself. Unprecedented acid rains would fall, dissolving rock, destroying vegetation. This apocalyptic picture would slowly unfold before our eyes. When we arrive at the deepest point on Earth, the Mariana Trench, to unveil the strange legends long whispered about it. A trench without seawater becomes a magnificent and terrifying crescent-shaped abyss. The canyon carves deep into the Earth's crust, its cliffs descending 11 kilometers downward. Standing at the edge and looking down brings a dizziness like falling toward the planet's core. The trench walls are formed from some of the oldest rocks on Earth, forever immersed in darkness, alien as if belonging to another planet. The deepest part of the trench floor is covered by a thick layer of soft sediment that has remained there for millions of years. Organic matter deposited from the ocean floor makes every step difficult. The mud beneath our feet feels like melted tar after a fire, sticky and heavy. Most striking are the traces of human-made waste mixed into the mud, plastic bags, bottles, synthetic fibers, objects discarded by humans over decades, lying intact in the silent abyss. The water pressure here once could crush a steel submarine in a second, yet it could not destroy plastic. Now this place stands empty and motionless, but this silence is more piercing than any noise. We find a deep-sea research submersible in a tragic state. It is permanently trapped within this abyss. Metal twisted and reinforced glass shattered. Telling the horror of this environment, this is the most remote and inaccessible place on Earth, more difficult to reach than orbiting into space. The sense of isolation becomes tangible and heavy here, the canyon walls seem ready to swallow the sky itself. The air is scorching and heavy, not cold as one might imagine, because the Earth's crust here is terrifyingly thin. Heat from the planet's interior constantly radiates outward. The air is filled with the scent of burning sulfur, a thick smell of stone mixed with ancient mold. In this absolute darkness and suffocating vapor, explorers once dreamed of finding an entrance to the underworld or the lair of ancient monsters. We do not see sleeping giants, but the canyon itself is saturated with an oppressive presence. The Earth's crust here is dangerously thin. It could fracture at any moment. Without the immense support of ocean pressure, the canyon walls begin emitting sounds like groans, moving slowly, releasing catastrophic energy. But even in this hellish environment, we still find miracles of life. Strange creatures once rumored to be sea monsters. They are beings that defy every biological rule. Gigantic single-celled organisms. Bizarre fish with translucent skin so clear their organs are visible? Their forms resemble extraterrestrials from science fiction films, yet they were born on our own planet. Their bodies are fully adapted to the crushing pressure of the deep sea. But once the pressure is removed, their biological structure rapidly collapses. These creatures survive through chemosynthesis, transforming toxic chemicals into energy. Completely independent of sunlight, they feed on materials from volcanic eruptions, in an environment where any other organism would die instantly. They continue to reproduce. This is proof of the resilience and creativity of life on Earth. They can survive in boiling water, toxic chemicals, extreme pressure, and total darkness. Scientists believe this may resemble the form of life when Earth first emerged billions of years ago. As we gaze upon these deep-sea organisms, our hearts fill with awe. We share this planet with an entirely alien ecosystem we barely understand. We can imagine that Earth without its oceans would appear aged and frail, completely unrecognizable from its original form. It would lose its blue brilliance, turning gray and desiccated, like a fruit left to dry for ages. The ocean was never merely a basin of water, but the most complex and essential structure in Earth's circulatory system. The former oceans would become vast, dried basins, carved apart by jagged mountain ridges. The Mediterranean Sea would become a deep stone basin across its exposed seabed. Layers of rock would glitter under sunlight like frozen snowfields. The Pacific Ocean would become a colossal crater occupying nearly half of Earth's surface. The true scale of tectonic plates would be laid bare, making the planet appear smaller and more fragile, vulnerable in the cold universe. Human survival space is in truth only a thin membrane of life clinging to water. Without oceans, Earth would no longer be blue, but resemble a dead rock, no different from Mars or Venus, drifting alone in space. This entirely new geographic reality would erase every map humans have ever drawn, rendering the concept of borders meaningless. We would finally see clearly how absurd it is that humans attempt to divide Earth into territories, and that protecting the environment and cherishing the planet is what humanity should value most. In the end, we return the oceans to Earth. The waters once again fill the deep trenches, burying the secrets of the seabed. The planet regains its familiar blue, its surface appearing calm as before. But you will never look at this planet the same way again, because you now know that beneath that flat, tranquil sea surface lies another world entirely.